Hey everyone, it's Justine and welcome to a new video tutorial. Today I am showing off a ton of my favorite stencils that function a little bit differently than normal stencils in my opinion, and I've been wanting to do this video for a long time, so let's get right into it because I have tons of examples. This is the Dahlia A and B stencil from Altenew. They are available individually as well as a set, and they layer on top of each other to create a pretty background. So a layering stencil is a little bit different than a normal stencil, and I have a couple of my favorite examples in today's video. So I'm just going to take my Neenah Solar White 80 pound 4 by 5 1/4 cardstock, and you can see I've added some post-it tape and taped it to the stencil itself from the back, and then I can tape my stencil down to the front, and that is going to secure it in place. That is a little trick that I learned from Gina Designs, and it is genius. So I'm now going to start layering my ink. I'm starting off with some shaded lilac from Distress Oxide line, and this is a nice light periwinkle purple color, and I am going in with my blending tool. You'll see that I'm working on a glass mat from Tim Holtz. This makes it really easy to work with because the blending tool just slides so nicely onto the cardstock. You can see I go in a circular motion and I don't need to put a whole lot of pressure on my hand as I'm doing this. It's now covered the complete cardstock in a very solid color. So now what I need to do is I just need to layer the new stencil. So I'm going to peel this off here. And the new stencil is easy to line up because all of the areas that have those white lines are now covered in the stencil themselves. So it is a super easy stamp to line up, or stencil rather. So I'm going to go in now with some Wilted Violet, which is one of my favorite distresses. And I wasn't 100% sure if this would be a great color to layer because they're quite different colors, but it turned out stunning. Sometimes two contrasting colors really work well together. And you'll see that I started off, I wasn't too sure if I was supposed to only ink up the flowers themselves or if I was supposed to ink up the whole stencil. So I went ahead and just inked up the whole stencil because I thought that's probably what it's there for. However, the spaces I left blank now can be left whatever shade you like. It's really up to you. So now you can see how absolutely stunning that background is, and I'll put together all of the cards at the very end of the video. You can see a picture after each one just to show you an example. The next stencil is from Visible Image. Now I'm always struggling for baby cards. I don't know why, I just hate making them. So this stencil here is something a little bit unique. I've never seen a stencil that looks quite like this one before. And it has a little baby outline on it, as well as a little flower on the inside. And what's cool about this one is that you can make such quick and easy baby cards. You can make it pink, you can make it blue if you want to do more of a gender neutral, or if the baby shower is before the baby's born, then of course you can make it like a green or a yellow. It's completely up to you, and it's just so beautiful the way that it turns out in the end. So I'm working right now with some worn lipstick. You can see my paper is kind of shuffling around there. You can add tape to one side and then tape it down on the other side when you're finished if that's easier. I was just using my hand to put pressure on it and to keep it in place. You'll also notice that my fingers have a piece of post-it tape on them. This is going to help keep my fingers clean throughout the video because the more oxide ink I get on them, the more chances I'm going to touch a white space and get a fingerprint on it. So you can see I add some Pix Raspberry to the middle there to add a little bit of a darker pink, and I just embellish that very quickly with a small sentiment from My Favorite Things. The next stencil is from Concord and Ninth called Retro Petal. It has this hugs, a large tulip, as well as ways to add tulip rose to your background. Then you have this one here, which has sort of a curved diamond, and then the last one with petals. Now these ones come as a set, and they are absolutely gorgeous when they're all layered together, but of course you can do it individually as well. So I'm going to start off now with a piece of scratch paper. And the reason why is because I'm going to need to mark off the edges of the stencil in order to use this because this is a rotating stencil. Okay, so I've now lined up all of the petals on my cardstock where I want them to be. And I'm going to grab a pen now and I'm just going to mark off the corner of this stencil. You can mark off one corner, two, or all four. It's completely up to you, but this is just going to indicate where your stencil needs to be put. If you're going to be worried about your paper shifting underneath, you can use some removable tape adhesive. So I'll link to that in the video description below. And you just add the removable adhesive to the back and you'll be able to lift it off when needed. I'm going to add some squeezed lemonade now to the cardstock, and this is going to be layer 1. So you can also, if you'd like, you could use some post-it tape and make each row a different color or each column. It's completely up to you, but in the end you are going to get 4 colors, so you don't really need to do that unless you want to make it a little bit more complex. So now that I'm finished my first row, what I do is I take off my stencil and you leave your paper in place. It needs to stay in the exact same spot. Now you'll probably need to wipe off your stencil, especially if you're going to be using a different color. And then you're going to line up your stencil in the 2 corners there of the pen mark that you used. And then you can go in with your second color. So now that you've seen that in action, I'm going to speed up the video a little bit as I add the other colors of petals. So this one here is the carved pumpkin, And I went ahead and layered that up, and then I just rotated it 90 degrees again, and then lined up the corners, and then added my third color. Now, if you happen to forget which way that you rotated it or what direction, don't worry too much about it. When you put the stencil down onto your corners, you're going to notice whether or not there's color showing through. And wherever there's not color showing through, that's where you need to do it next. So you can see I had to do that a couple of times here. Just rotate it back and forth until I see an area with no color, and then I can go ahead and add the final color. I'm using picked raspberry as well as twisted citron for the rest of it. And remember not to forget to clean off your stencil in between. So this is just a fun way to add multiple colors onto a background that would be really difficult to do with a stamp because it would involve a ton of masking and a ton of work. So this is a really just cool stencil to have in your collection. Now you can take this even one step further and add the other stencil that it comes with. This is going to add color into the center of those, I don't know if you want to call them sort of like clover leaves or little X's or butterflies or whichever you want to call them. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead with some shaded lilac for this one. I really was struggling with a color combination and I decided to just go for it and see what would happen. And I absolutely adore this color combination. I never thought this was something that I would like. So when I peeled that off, you'll see that I have this absolutely stunning background when I'm all finished. My next card uses the Scallop Builder stencil from Altenew. This is also a layering stencil and it's a lot of fun because you could add a lot of color and get a lot of really cheerful card out of this one. So I'm going ahead and just taping that down once again to my stencil to keep everything in place and then taping my stencil to my glass mat. I'm now going in with some picked raspberry distress oxide ink and I'm going to layer the entire stencil full of the pink ink until I'm happy with the amount of ink that's on my card. Then you just remove your stencil, clean it, and then you're going to go ahead and layer it up again. So this time you need to layer it so that the plastic area of the stencil is covering the colors that you just did, and now the area in between is white. So you're able to add the color. So I went in with some squeezed lemonade here, another bright and fun color that also goes really well with pink. And then when you take off the stencil, you have this beautiful background here that also has a little bit of white space. So don't be concerned if it doesn't line up exactly. I think the white makes it work even better. The next stencil is the Wreath Builder stencil from Gina Designs. This stencil here helps you build perfect wreaths every time. So if you ever have something that you want to go in a perfect circle, this is the stencil for you. Comes in 2 different sizes and they are used with square card panels, and so you just need to add your stamps and then you're going to stamp and go. You can use this with a full-size card panel as well. Jennifer McGuire has a lovely video on how to do that. Now, so what you're going to do is you are going to place your stamp just like I have here. I like to kind of start on the right hand side in the middle, and then I'm going to ink it up and then work my way around. So I'll show you exactly how it works. I'm using some Lime Ricky ink from Catherine Pooler Designs, and I am going ahead and stamping it onto my cardstock. The next thing I need to do is I need to just follow the pattern of the diamond that's in the stencil. So I'm just going to rotate it to the next area. Now, each time you rotate it, just make sure you rotate it in the same direction. You can go either to the right or to the left, it doesn't matter. And you're going to see that it's going to create a perfect wreath. So you're just going to put it sort of, it's not exactly a quarter turn, I believe it's an eighth of a turn each time. And then you are just going to keep stamping and it builds up a pattern. You can build up as many layers as you like. And I'm using the Wreath Builder stamp set from Gina K Designs because this is a perfect example of a stamp set that's perfect for this technique. You can create all sorts of wreaths with it, and it also comes with some really great sentiments. Now make sure that you don't think that it just has to stop here with stamping just one layer of things. So it is a little bit time consuming, I guess you could say. It really only takes a couple seconds for each turn, but it does take a little bit of a turn. This does need to be used with the stamping tool, either a MISTI or a stamping platform, whichever one you use, and that's important. But you can also add things in the middle as well, and you can keep adding things the way you like them. So it's completely up to you how many of these things you actually use. I noticed my ink was getting a little bit dry here, so I had to go in and actually refill it, and now it's working just fine. So this is Party Dress ink from Catherine Pooler, and you can see just how gorgeous and vibrant the ink is. Now, when you're using this, just be sure to keep bulking it up because I think the more you add to it, kind of the better that it looks and the more exciting. It makes it look like perfect stamping each time, and people are going to wonder, how did you do that? So this ink color here is Limoncello, and that is my final color. And you can see that I have this beautiful spring-looking wreath when it's all said and done. Now the sentiments in this stamp set are perfect because they fit exactly in that circle, and so I decided to stamp it with wishing you the best birthday ever, and then I'm going to move on to my next set of stencils. So the next ones here are from My Favorite Things, and these are scene builder stencils in my opinion. So there are clouds, there are waves, there are snowbanks and hills, and now there are also grass, and they are these four-sided stencils that you can use, and they are absolutely stunning because you just need to go off the edge and it creates different patterns like clouds and things. And so I'm just adding a very clean and simple pattern here to my background that is clouds. You could use each one of the different edges to keep things interesting, and I'm just doing a very clean and simple card for this one. Okay, so moving on to the other scene builders, of course you can use these all together as well. I have grabbed some Salty Ocean Distress Oxide ink, I believe it is, and I'm going in with my tool here and I've inked up the entire background. Now, again, you may want to use some Post-it tape to protect your hands, but I'm going to go in now with the Waves stencil, and now I can create a stencil that is absolutely beautiful and looks like water. So all I need to do is just keep moving it up or down and inking the edge of it, and that's going to give me a pattern inside the Distress Oxide that I've already done, and it's going to look absolutely fabulous when it's all said and done. I love the detail, and even though after I spritched it with water, the detail kind of wasn't as obvious after, I still think it turned out really quite beautifully. So I went in after this and I grabbed a spray tool and I sprayed it with water because Distress Oxides react so beautifully with water. I probably wouldn't have done that looking back in hindsight now just because it got rid of some of that beautiful pattern. So here's a final look at that card here, super fun and playful. I wanted to show you as well that you can combine them also to make beautiful scene cards. So this is the Hills and Drifts or Drifts and Hills stencil, and this one creates either it could be a snowbank in the winter or it could be hills in the summer. It's up to you. And it could also function as water if you really wanted it to be. So I'm going in with some, I believe it's Mowed Lawn, no, Pale Paint, that's the one. And I am adding my grass to the background here. And as I said, there is a grass one from MFT as well that I don't have quite yet, so you could get that one as well. And I'll link to that one below as well because you'll probably get an even better look in your hills. Now I'm going in with some of those clouds with some tumbled glass distress ink, and you can see I have a beautiful scene in just a couple of seconds to add for a really pretty card. So now comes the fun part of embellishing all of my cards. So I'm going to use a Fierce and Fabulous stamp set from W+9, and you can see that I've already die cut a stitched rectangle die, and that is going to fit my sentiment just perfectly. I searched around in my stash for it, and I found one that worked really well. So I'm going to ink that up using some VersaFine Black Onyx ink and then stamp that a couple of times here to add to the front panel of my Dahlia stencil. I also added a little bit of 3D foam tape here just to give it some dimension. These are becoming my favorite little foam here. They're from ThermoWeb and iCraft, and I absolutely love the amount of dimension you get with them, even though the backings are a little bit tedious to peel off compared to 3M foam tape. So I'm just going to center that there onto my stenciled background, and that will be the end of that card. So you can see all of these cards are extremely quick and easy. There's nothing that I really did here that is super crazy. Now this stamp set from Hovey Doodle called Everyday Sentiment is beautiful. I had to buy this one the second I saw it. I love the font on it, and I love the larger sentiment combined with the smaller sentiment. And I'm going to be using one of the belated birthday stamps. And I'm going to take a moment here as well to grab some other stamps from sentiments that I'm going to cut out in white anyway. So the Whoopsie Daisy one from Hovey Doodle, and then I have this fun What from CZ Design for Simon Says stamp. And then I wanted to show you as well this amazing stamp set from CZ Design and Simon Says stamp. And this one's called Love You Like, and it has a whole bunch of different sentiments on it, like love you like Netflix, love you like French fries, love you like love you so much, love you like dessert, love you like nachos, love you like a great pedicure. And it's just a funny set to have in your stash. I absolutely had to have it the second I saw that one as well, just because it's so unique. So I wanted to stamp the love you as well as a sentiment that went with it. Now, not only does the Love You stamp have really cute little sayings that go with it, but so does this Best Days stamp that say things like, you are flipping amazeballs, and I needed to stamp that right away because it's so funny. So I stamped that using some Versamark ink on some black cardstock, and then I added some white embossing powder to it and use my heat tool to melt that so that I could have a little bit of variety as well between black and white sentiments. So once everything was melted, I didn't do anything special with these sentiments aside from just cut them down into squares and rectangles using my paper trimmer. So I wanted to cut down some of the panels. So that stencil that I had used here, for example, was a little bit off center when I was all finished creating it. So I went ahead and cut it with a stitched rectangle die to recenter it. That's something that you can do with anything if you happen to get it off center. Just cut it a little bit down with either a paper trimmer or a stitched rectangle die or a rectangle die, and you're good to go. So I added that What You're Flipping Amazeballs, and then I used the Love You, and then I decided to add the Like Netflix because I thought that was super funny and definitely applies to my life, and this will definitely be my next little happy anniversary card for sure. And for the baby one, my favorite things, Essential Sentiments, saves me every time. There's two different versions of it. The first one I use literally for every card that I don't know what sentiment to put on it, and it is just a very soft, beautiful font. They're simple, they don't take away from the design, and of course they have nearly every occasion you can think of because I don't have any baby stamps. What a shock. So I added the Welcome Little one in a black cardstock with white heat embossing. So the next one here is a background with the waves. You can see there after the water hit that the waves are quite subtle at this point. And I used a couple of stamps from my favorite things that I have pre-colored. This is from the Beach Buds stamp set. And then I also used the Farm Friends from my favorite thing for this fun little chicken and cow, as well as the sentiment from Hovey Doodle that, again, I just absolutely love that font. It's gorgeous. So this is a fun little scene also where it has a little belated birthday card with some farm animals. The last one I did here has to do with dragons. I've been wanting to use this dragon stamp from my favorite things forever, so I colored that in some pale colors and then attached that onto my cloud background, and I used the I Heard You Were Dragon sentiment that I cut out using the fishtail banners. So here is a final look at all the cards. The Wreath Builder stencil from Gina K Designs, the Baby Blooms from Visible Image, the Scallop Builder from Altenew, the Retro Petals from Concord and Ninth, the Dahlia layering stamp from Altenew, or Stencil rather, the different scene builders from My Favorite Things, such as the waves, the hills, as well as the clouds. I hope you enjoyed all of these card examples. I apologize for such a long video, but I had so much fun creating all of these different cards. And I have all the supplies listed below in the video description if you're interested in any of them, as well as a suggested video on stenciling here and a subscribe button to subscribe to my channel. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. I will see you very shortly for another video. Bye!